All right, so I'm going to be reading Island Shipwreck chapters 8 through 11 for the fourth time today. So here we go. Okay, no, sorry, it's only 3 times. We left off where Luke had thrown up in the bathroom and he did not want anyone to know, and he cleaned up the mess that was made because he forgot to shut the valve. So, chapter 8, Saturday, July 15th, 0650 hours. JJ Lane was dreaming about bikinis. The pool deck was packed with them. You must be an actress, he said to a yellow one with stars on it. The girl reached out and smack! Will Greenfield's arm came down off the upper bunk and the open hand slapped JJ full in the face. The actor's son sat bolt upright, visions of swimsuits popping like soap bubbles before his bleary eyes. Bright sunshine shone down the companionway. He checked his Rolex watch, a birthday gift from Madonna, 6:53. Huh? Radford usually had them up by 6. He heard the deep rumble of the captain's voice above them. Let them sleep, Mr. Radford. They were pretty sick yesterday, and they need their rest. You and I can get these sails up. Radford laughed. Sure can, Skipper, and we'll have an easier time of it than they do. JJ heard the captain chuckle. Then he heard another sound, a power hum, and the scrape and squeak of a mechanical winch in operation. Frowning, he crept up the companionway and peered out on deck. The captain and mate were both in the cockpit, and the mainsail was rising all by itself. He let himself drop to the deck of the cabin. Unbelievable. The 3 other boys stirred. More trouble? Will asked fearfully. JJ was so angry he could barely speak. The captain and Radford, they're raising the sails. Luke climbed down from his bunk. Just as long as we don't have to do it. They're raising the sails automatically, JJ exclaimed. There's a gizmo in the cockpit that does it like a garage door opener. Ian spoke up. You mean all that halyard work? For nothing, confirmed the actor's son. They could have done it with the touch of a button, just like they're doing this minute. Those jerks, Luke muttered. I'll bet Ratface is laughing inside every time we rip up our hands hauling those ropes. It's probably CNC's policy, learning teamwork by doing everything the old-fashioned way, Will put in. By suffering, Luke added. We can't let them get away with this, JJ said, tight-lipped. What can we do about it? Asked Ian. They're in charge and we're not. We have to do what they say. We can fight back, JJ insisted. Luke glared at him. I don't like CNC, but it's better than jail, and that's where I go if I don't complete this trip. Don't even think about messing it up for me. Will struggled into his life jacket and pulled the straps tight around his back. That was the 4th time. 6 more to go, Radford's orders. Yesterday, Will had spent the entire day with the device on backward, and the punishment was to put it on and take it off 10 times in a row. Not like that. From behind, iron hands seized the ties and yanked them to strangulation level. It's supposed to be snug. Hey, that hurts. Perfect, Radford confirmed. If it's comfortable, it's on wrong. 10 more times, Archie. Will smoldered as the mate strode away. It was humiliating. Why wouldn't Radford let him do this in the privacy of the crew cabin? He had to be out here in front of everybody, even Lisa. She wasn't saying anything, but he could feel her scorn. She stood behind the wheel of the Phoenix, piloting the schooner through the waves. Captain Cascaden was at her side, beaming his approval. Wouldn't you know it? Out of the 6 of them, his sister was turning into the star-sailing pupil, while he was the sweat hog in the back row, too stupid to figure out how to put on a life jacket. Look at her, chatting with the captain like they're old friends. A bitter taunt began to form in his mind, something like, Hey, Lise, make sure you don't slip in any of that barf from yesterday. But he didn't dare say it with Cascaden right there. Besides, Lisa wasn't letting the seasickness bother her at all. Lisa, who had more reasons to hate this trip than anybody, actually seemed to be liking it. I should have been an only child. The captain resumed his stance at the wheel, while Lisa began examining various gauges and dials on the control console. Yeah, right, thought Will, like she knows what she's looking at. He watched as his sister's features contracted into a frown. Captain, I forget. What does it mean when the barometer is falling so fast you can see it moving? The captain scanned the glassy sky to the west. The line of black clouds was as solid as a wall stretching clear across the horizon. Dun, dun, dun. Chapter 9. Saturday, still Saturday, July 15th, 1750 hours. The news from the weather facts was all bad. A tropical storm near the equator had suddenly turned their way. It was set to collide with a large mass of cooler air dipping down from the north. Will was making deals even before the captain explained their situation. Will likes to make deals all the time. If this storm misses us, I'll keep my room so clean you can eat off the floor. So I'm afraid we've got a bit of a rough ride ahead of us tonight, the captain told them grimly. You mean last time wasn't a rough ride? Charlotte said in dismay. My dear, the captain replied evenly, last time was a lap around the duck pond compared to what the next few hours might bring us. But the Phoenix is a fine ship. We'll make it through if we keep our heads. The first order of business was to take down the sails. I can't believe they're making us do this by hand, complained JJ as he and Luke hauled on the main halyard. There's a storm coming and we're doing work when we don't have to. Hey, said Luke sharply, this is no time to get on the captain's nerves. But it's such a snow job. He belted out the last two words so they would reach the mate on the ratlines. Radford glared down at them. They heard the engine come to life. The Phoenix would face this gale under power. The weather roared up quickly. At dusk, the rain started pelting down on them. The wind came with the dark, a blustery blow that had the crew hanging onto bulwarks and rigging as they made their way around the deck. Mr. Radford handed out life jackets and safety harnesses. Always keep your belt locked onto something that's attached to the boat, he ordered. When you move from place to place, hang on with two hands. Don't be embarrassed to crawl. Got it? The waves grew slowly but steadily. At first, they weren't any bigger than the seas that had turned the Phoenix into a roller coaster ride a day before. But Luke could see that they were more dangerous. Yesterday, the swells had been like mountains, forcing the schooner to climb and descend from peak to peak. These were more like a series of oncoming cliffs, vertical walls of water. A ship can't climb a cliff. Instead, wave after wave broke over the bow, sending a constant knee-deep flood surging across the deck. Ian's feet were swept out from under him, and down he went. Luke caught him and yanked him back up. Luke wasn't sure whether or not to be alarmed. The storm was howling worse every minute, but the captain and mate were working calmly and efficiently in the battering wind and rain. This is bad, right? He shouted to Mr. Radford. Shouldn't we go below? Don't panic, Archie, ordered the mate. Let's batten everything down first. No, JJ protested. We don't have to get it blown around like this. Radford shot him a fierce look. You're going to ask your famous daddy to pay off the storm and make it go away? We can outrun it, JJ argued. We've got more wind than we know what to do with. Just put up the sails and fly. Radford shook his head in disgust and rushed away. JJ threw up his arms. What'd I say? He got a faceful of spray for his answer. Great patches of foam blew in dense streaks. At one point, Luke looked over the gunwale and saw nothing but white water, not a speck of blue or green. Every minute or so, the Phoenix was lifted bodily and then flung contemptuously aside by a 30-foot wave. So a 30-foot wave is pretty tall. If you look in our gymnasium at Navigator, it's probably a little bit higher than the ceiling. Can you imagine a wave that tall? Oh my gosh, I can't even. I'm already, okay. The deck lurched violently. Unlike yesterday's up and down, the tumbling of the sea was heavy and shock-like. Even athletic Charlotte couldn't keep her balance. She sat down on the cabin top and tried to slide along on her behind. Will crawled across the deck on all fours, unable to trust his own feet. A rush of sea washed over him, leaving him flopping and sputtering. Lisa was clamped on the ratlines, her face green. I'm going to lose it, she warned. That's so typical, howled her brother, spitting salt water. All day long you're Sinbad the sailor, and now you can't hang on to your lunch? Radford turned to the cockpit. We're secure, Skipper. Harnessed to the wheel stand, Captain Cascade was barely visible through the rain, foam, and spray. Out of the chaos came his order. All hands below. You don't have to ask me twice, exclaimed Will, sprint crawling from the companionway to the main cabin. Lisa was hot on his wheels, followed by Charla, high-stepping to keep her balance. Next came Luke, dragging Ian by the arm. At the last second, a huge wave broke over the bow, jolting the stern upward and pitching the two boys down the companionway. Radford hooted with laughter. You guys should join the circus, the Flying Archie Brothers. His brow clouded as he did a head count. Where's Richie Rich? Luke froze as JJ's words came back to him. Just put up the sails and fly. That maniac, he muttered, clambering up the companionway again. Hey, barked the mate, get back here, Archie. At that moment, JJ was clamped around the wrapped mainsail, hanging on with one hand and untying lines with the other. The furled sail was free. He stood up. Instantly, he was thrown to the deck. His father had once gotten him a bit part in a movie on an earthquake scene. There had been 30 special effect guys underneath them, pitching the floor every which way. It was nothing compared to the Phoenix right now. They had to get out of here. They could beat the storm no matter what Radford said. All they needed was some sail. One thing you should know about JJ is he thinks he knows everything all the time, which gets him into trouble. Crouching low, he dashed astern through the rain and spray, steadying himself with an arm on the cabin top. He peered around the corner and set his eyes on the instrument panel behind the wheel. 6, maybe 7 feet away. He'd be seen, but by then it would be too late, if he could keep from falling flat on his face. Counting silently, 1, 2, 3, he launched himself past the captain and reached for the mechanism that raised the mainsail. Luke hit him at hip height, diving like a linebacker. The two of them fell hard to the slick deck. What the? The captain spun around to face them. What are you doing here, crewmen? Get yourselves below. You lunatic, Luke rasped at JJ. You'll get us all killed. I know what I'm doing, JJ insisted frantically. He lunged for the panel, but Luke grabbed him once more. Archie, Radford struggled onto the scene. The beam of his flashlight. Hi, Joseph. The beam, where was I at? I always get distracted. Okay, where was I? Oh, yes. The beam of his flashlight captured Luke and JJ locked in a wrestling match. Break it up, ordered Cascaden. He unhooked his safety harness and stepped between the two combatants, separating them with a heave of his powerful arms. The schooner lurched suddenly, and JJ was tossed off his feet. The deck wash had him. It was about to sweep him away. In a single motion, Captain Cascaden clamped his right hand onto JJ's wrist and reached back with the left, groping for something, anything to hold on to. His fingers closed on the side of the instrument panel and gripped hard. His palm pressed against a small button. The roar of the waves covered the mechanical clunk as the mainsail began to rise automatically. Radford ran over, and he and the captain set JJ back on his feet. Captain, Luke spotted the white canvas flapping wildly as it rose from its boom. The sail! Captain and mate turned just as the 50-knot wind filled the half-open mainsail with an overpowering force. It was as if the whole world suddenly tilted 90 degrees. The 60-foot boat was blown all the way over on its side, its mast barely out of the water. Radford grabbed the main sheet, which is now extended over his head like monkey bars. The captain hung on to JJ and the instrument panel. The next thing Luke knew, he was moving, falling parallel to the deck. Only the gunwale, 18 inches above wood, stood between him and a violent ocean. Wham! He bounced off like a ping-pong ball, snatching wildly for the lifeline. He felt the wire in his hands and held on, his feet dragging in the water. Ah! Archie, Radford called, lock your harness on the lifeline. I can't, he tried to answer, but a torrent of sea and spray found his throat. He came up choking. Waves crashed over the twin masts. The automatic halyard winch ground to a halt. The captain secured JJ's safety belt around the wheel stand. Then he hit the button to lower the mainsail. Nothing happened. No power to the winch, howled Radford. I'll have to lower it manually. Like Tarzan, moving from vine to vine, the mate grabbed the halyard and swung over. He hung there, trying his full weight to pull the sail down. Too much blow, skipper, he called. I can't budge it. Take the helm, crewman, the captain ordered JJ. He heaved himself up on the side of the cabin top to make his way over to the mate. Clinging to the wire at the starboard gunwale, Luke was the first to see the great wave. It was enormous, a 40-footer curling over the high side of the Phoenix like a giant hand about to crush the small ship. He shouted, "Captain!" And then the monster broke. To Luke, it seemed like Niagara Falls raging down the upturned deck toward him. Crack! The main mast snapped like a toothpick under the weight of the thundering sea. An avalanche of rope and canvas pelted down. As if in slow motion, the broken peak of the mast toppled over, striking Captain Cascadon across the shoulders. Fierce lightning backlit a terrifying scene. Luke watched in horror as the captain was pitched from the deck into the foaming sea. "Man overboard!" he tried to shout, but the force of the wave drove the gunwale of the Phoenix and Luke with it deep beneath the rampaging sea. Okay, so end of chapter 9. I've got 2 more to go. They just lost Captain Cascadon. Not good. All because JJ knew it all. Remember? He knew what he was doing. So he's causing this problem. Let's see. Saturday, July 15th, 2015 hours. Underwater. It was a strangely quiet and peaceful place. Luke was in a trance, experiencing a few seconds in a slow, almost lazy time warp of crystal clear thought. He was going down. He was sure of that. The Phoenix was sinking, taking everybody with it. Even if he would make it back to the surface, then what? A lone swimmer, even one with a life jacket, had no chance against 30-foot waves. Hi, Jessica. It was almost funny. Luke Haggerty had avoided Williston. Instead, he had chosen a death sentence. Not really funny, maybe ironic, I'm not sure. The gunwale sprang back out of the deck, swung up to meet him. There was a painful thud, and he saw stars. He looked around. He was right in front of the cockpit. There, a terrified JJ clung to the wheel, wrapped in rigging and torn canvas. "Hi, Mom." "The captain," Luke gasped, choking and spitting. JJ was sobbing out of control. I'm sorry. "Did you find the captain?" JJ shook his head. "He told me to hang on to the wheel." "You picked a heck of a time to start following orders." Mr. Radford waited for a break in the wave action to roll like a landing parachutist on the starboard deck. He clamped his harness onto a bulwark and began hurling life preservers into the water. "Skipper! Skipper!" He panned the waves with his flashlight. "The mast hit him," Luke shouted, tethering his belt to the base of the instrument panel. "He could be unconscious." The mate leaped for the cockpit, shoving JJ aside with a football straight arm that left the boy swinging like a pendulum in his harness. Radford grabbed the throttle and thrust it forward. "We're circling back." With a cough and a sputter, the engine died. Cursing, the mate tried to restart it. It turned over but wouldn't catch. Then it stopped turning over. "Check the engine room, Archie." "We can't unhook our belts," Luke protested. "Right below you," said Radford. Luke knelt down and threw open the hatch. There was the engine, half submerged in 3 feet of water. He turned to the mate, but his mouth couldn't form words. Fear had frozen his jaw. "Well?" Radford prompted angrily. JJ supplied the answer in the form of a question. "If we're flooded here, does that mean the whole boat's flooded?" Charlotte's upper body emerged from the main cabin. "We've got water down here," she cried. "How much?" called the mate. "A couple of feet at least." "Son of a—" The mate switched on the electric bilge pump. It was as dead as the engine. "Get on the manual pumps," he roared. "What about the captain?" Luke insisted. "We're looking for him." JJ pointed frantically astern. But he's back there somewhere." "We can't get back there without the engine power," Radford snarled. "He has to find us. Get all hands on deck to man the pumps." Luke saw Captain Cascadon in every wave, heard a call for help in every gust of wind. His eyes searched the backwash of each breaker that rocked the deck, half expecting the ocean to return the old sailor to his ship. JJ never stopped yelling, "Captain! Captain!" He got no answer. The feeling of hope on the schooner was so strong that Luke could almost reach out and touch it, could taste it in the salt spray. But it was only a feeling trumped by the reality. Pumping, hard work, simple. Repeating, exhausting. No one dared unhook the safety harness for fear of being pitched overboard as the Phoenix was brutalized by the killer storm. It was hours and it felt like years before the wind began to subside. The rain kept coming, but it weakened, a soaking shower rather than a driving attack. The terrible lightning ceased. Finally, the waves rounded off. When Mr. Radford ordered them all to bed, nobody asked about the captain. They already knew. So you can make an inference here because they haven't really said what's happened to the captain, but you could probably guess what happened to the captain based on what you know already. But we don't know for sure. Maybe we'll find out. Chapter 11, Sunday, July 16th, 025 hours. Luke awoke with blonde hair in his face. He tried to sit up and couldn't budge an inch. Man overboard, murmured a voice beside him, very close. It was JJ. Luke started to complain and then remembered the captain. He shut his eyes tightly and shook his head, but the awful image wouldn't go away. The 6'5" cascaded disappearing into the foam. When Radford had finally ordered them to bed, the lower bunks were underwater. They were sharing the uppers, packed like sardines, two to a berth, strapped in with lee canvases. Luke leaned over to unfasten the hook, elbowing JJ awake in the process. I had a nightmare, JJ mumbled. No, you didn't, Luke told him soberly. Will peered out from the bunk he shared with Ian. Is it just me or is the water getting higher? JJ jumped down with a splash. Feel that? Calm. And look, he pointed outside. Sun's back. The four sloshed out of bed and climbed up the companionway. On deck, crusted sea salt crunched under their feet. In the light of day, the Phoenix was a floating plate of spaghetti. Rope and rigging lay tangled everywhere. The main mast looked like giant hands had snapped it in two. Equipment, most of it smashed, was deposited in clumps all over the deck. The radio antenna was gone. The bowsprit was cracked and off-center. The ship's dinghy, which was usually stowed upside down in the rigging, was now pointed straight up, as if it were a rocket about to be launched to the moon. Ian summed up everybody's feeling when he said, wow. Lisa and Charlotte had worked on one of the pumps, trying to clear the water out of the engine room. Mr. Radford manned the other, which was draining the main cabin and galley. All activity ceased when they saw the boys on deck. JJ spoke first. Shouldn't we still try looking for the captain? Radford stood up. If looks could kill, JJ would have been fried to a crisp. To look for the captain, you don't use a boat. You use a submarine. Ooh, that was a ouch comment. Because, they're not going to use a boat to find the captain because a submarine goes underwater. That's so sad. Hey, Luke said angrily, you're talking about a real guy who died. It's not a joke. No, it's not, the mate agreed unpleasantly. Someday I want to sit down with you and your friend Richie Rich and find out why you needed to play WWF in a full gale. You darn near got us all killed. And you did get one of us killed. Dan Rappaport's words at the Guam airport echoed in JJ's ears. You're going to kill somebody one of these days. I just stopped for a second. So at the beginning, if you remember when JJ was dropped off, he was dropped off because he kept getting in trouble, kept doing all these bad things. And Dan Rappaport, who was the guy who was dropping him off, told him, if you don't change, someone's going to get killed. And sure enough, what happened? Someone got killed. I was not expecting that when Rappaport said that to JJ at the beginning of the book. I didn't really actually expect anyone to die because of JJ's choices. And it's all just because of his choices, because he thinks he knows it all and doesn't have to listen to anybody. Well, don't blame me, Luke exclaimed hotly. I was trying to keep this maniac from raising the sail just to show you he knew how. Not true, said JJ in a hollow tone. I thought I could help. Next time, snarled Radford, help somebody else. Lisa stepped forward. Let's forget about who did what and concentrate on how we're going to get out of this. Calmly, the mate went over to their station. According to the GPS, they were 480 miles east-northeast of Guam. Nearest landfall, Guam. No SOS had been sent, and the radio was out. Even if the radio could be fixed, the call couldn't travel much more than 15 or 20 miles without an antenna. Their only chance of being spotted depended on the schooner's emergency position indicating radio beacon, known as the EPIRB. This was unlikely to reach other ships, but might be detected by passing airplanes. How many air routes fly over this part of the Pacific? Asked Luke. None, replied Radford. The engine was dead and full of seawater, which pretty much guaranteed that it would never work again. Very good things happening here. That was my sarcasm. You guys know that. The mainsail was gone, and the staysail and jibs couldn't be used because of the damage to the bowsprit. They left just the foresail. It was fine, if they could ever get past the thousands of pounds of tangled ropes and falling rigging. The drinking water tanks were okay, but there was no electricity and no refrigeration. The food stores and medical supplies were at least partly damaged by salt water. Worst of all, the Phoenix wasn't expected in for 3 weeks. That meant no one was looking for them. Are we going to die? Asked Will in a small voice. I won't lie to you, said Radford. We're in a big trouble. To get through this, we're going to have to work 20 hours a days, ration our supplies, and, he glared at Luke and JJ, no more crazy stunts. We've lost a man already, and we're all going to have to live with that, if we live. According to the mate, there were 3 main jobs that needed to be done to ensure their survival. 1, pumping. Pump like your life depends on it, because it does. Number 2, clearing the foresail. If we go anywhere, that's how we'll get there. And number 3, lightening the ship. If we can't eat it, wear it, or sail it, we pitch it. That included luggage, books, all pots, pans, and dishes except for the bare minimum, and the waterlogged mattresses off the lower bunks. The drawers from the built-in dressers went over the side next, along with cartons of spoiled food from the galley. Are you sure we should be doing this? Charlotte asked nervously. She watched a load of instant mashed potatoes swell up. I'm not sure why they got rid of instant mashed potatoes, because I don't think they would have gone bad. But anyway, she watched a load of instant mashed potatoes swell up like a swamp creature before sinking out of sight. It can't be good for the environment to just throw garbage in the ocean. Are you kidding? Lisa managed to manufacture a smile as she pumped. These fish never had it so good. They're probably going to ask us for gravy. Mr. Radford clung to the mainmast, chopping at the splintered wood with an axe. Will and Ian worked at the tangle of rigging with hacksaws. It took until noon, but all hands paused to watch the top of the mast and hundreds of pounds of ropes and shredded canvas slide over the side and disappear under the waves. It brought up a half-hearted cheer. Even Mr. Radford added a grunt of approval. Lunch was the Phoenix's entire store of frozen hot dogs, which were thawing out since there was no electricity in the freezer. Charlotte made a face. Any vegetables? The mate pulled out a huge tub of chocolate ice cream and tossed it to her. I can't eat this, she exclaimed. Wait a few hours, grunted Radford. You can drink it. She bit her lip. Without the captain around, that terrible man was becoming meaner and more obnoxious. She felt instantly guilty. Was that all the captain meant to her? An authority figure to keep Radford in line? How selfish was that? While the crew was eating, the mate led himself over the side and down the swim ladder to check the waterfall in the hall. When he came back up, his face was gray. Not enough, he panted. We've got to dump more gear. There's nothing left to dump, JJ protested. Radford looked at him sourly. Don't tempt me, Richie Rich. They removed the boom of the mainsail and slid into the water. The galley's refrigerator and the backup generator, both ruined, were next. Then the mate's attention fell on the Phoenix's 3 anchors. One by one, they were cut loose and dropped into the ocean. Luke was worried. What if we need one of those? Anchor? Oh, one of those 2, anchor. If we get that close to land, Archie, Radford promised, I'll jump in and hold the boat personally. Hey, what's the big idea? Demanded JJ from the open cargo hatch. He stepped onto the deck, dragging a large, bright yellow suitcase. I had to leave my jet ski in Hawaii, but someone's allowed to bring the world's biggest piece of luggage on board? He fiddled with the catch. Whose is this? Radford's eyes bulged. No! Pow! With a hiss of compressed gas, the suitcase burst open, shooting out to 10 times its original size. JJ was knocked back into the flooded cargo hold where he landed with a mammoth splash. The thing kept on growing and folding at the corners like a flower. By the time JJ's head poked out of the hold, an 8-foot rubber life raft sat on deck, complete with sun canopy, seating for 10, signal flares, first aid kit, and provisions. The roar that came from Radford was barely human. Why is it always you, Richie Rich? JJ was soaked and sulky. You should have told me there was a boat in there. Oh, because the label said contents 1 lifeboat. What did you want? A singing telegram? We'll just fold it up again, JJ said defensively. What's the big deal? The big deal is you can't fold it up again, the mate howled. Has to go back to the factory to be recharged. Well, that's stupid. Yeah, it is. And it's even stupider to waste our precious time tying this thing down so it doesn't blow out to sea with the next puffs of breeze. Will spent the day cringing as he waited for the mate's furious criticism to fall on him. Everyone was getting yelled at, even little Miss Perfect, Lisa. When she delivered the news that their EPIRB was conked out, Radford hollered at her like she had personally smashed it with a hammer. Maybe Captain Cascaden had thought Lisa could do no wrong, but Radford? He was an equal opportunity offender. It was tough to be Captain's pet when the captain wasn't around anymore. Instantly, Will felt terrible for his thoughts. A man was dead and gone, and he was almost celebrating the fact that it made things harder for Lisa. Here he goes, he's going to promise some things again. If by some miracle the captain turns out to be okay, I'll take out the garbage. I'll give to charity if I ever get money. I'll be a better person, I swear. The problem with the EPIRB turned out to be a fixable one. JJ's inflatable lifeboat had its own beacon, which was moved to the navigation room and switched on. You're welcome, JJ gloated. Opening that raft seems like a pretty smart move now. Huh. It was a kind of comment that would have guaranteed a screaming broadside from the old Radford, but the mate gave no sign that he'd even heard. Something had changed about him, almost as if there had been an audible click. Later, when Radford went over the side to recheck the waterline of the boat, Luke was waiting for him at the swim ladder. How are we doing? We need to get rid of more stuff? Radford grunted and wouldn't answer. At 4:00, when he went to assess the water in the hall, Lisa went with him to hold the flashlight. It looks worse than ever, she said in concern. Are you sure that all that pumping is doing any good? The mate remained sullen and silent. I liked him better when he was yelling at us, was Will's opinion. You know where you stand with a guy who hates you, but one who ignores you? That's scary. I miss the captain, Ian said simply. Long faces nodded all around. At dinner, the mate wouldn't even eat with them. He took a tin of cold beans and sat atop the main cabin, staring into the sunset, shoveling with a plastic spoon. It was a moonless night, impossible to tell the Phoenix from the vast ocean around her. Luke couldn't see his own sneakers without a flashlight, and the crew walked carefully despite the calm waters. It had taken all day, but the foresail had finally emerged from the mountain of tangled ropes and rigging. I think it's ready, Luke called to Mr. Radford. The mate was still atop the main cabin, flat on his back now, staring at the stars. We're ready to raise the foresail, Luke repeated, louder this time. No answer. Ian tried his luck. Excuse me, he ventured. Mr. Ratface? A collective gasp went up on deck. JJ stopped pumping and laughed out loud. The mate sat up suddenly. What? What did you call me? Mr. Ian caught a desperate look from Luke and realized his mistake. The younger boy went pale. Foresail's ready, Luke put in quickly. Want us to raise it? Radford jumped down from the cabin top. Even in the pitch black, they could see his burning eyes glaring at them. But when he finally spoke, his tone was light and easygoing. Tomorrow's another day, he said. Why don't you kids get some sleep? I'll look after things up here. What about pumping? Asked Lisa. You can't save your life if you kill yourself doing it, the mate told her. He paused. You did a lot of good work today in a tough situation. His face twisted. I'm proud of you. Will held it in until the four boys were splashing around the cabin. Mr. Ratface, he guffawed at Ian. Man, I was expecting him to go berserk and throw you overboard. I thought it was his name, Ian said honestly. Nobody's name is Ratface, Luke exclaimed, hoisting himself onto the upper berth and drying his wet feet with a towel. Not even in TV land. Ian flushed. You know how sometimes you hear a word, but you don't think about what it really means? It just sounds to you. Luke patted him on the shoulder. We forgive you, kid. We needed to hear it anyway. Well, he didn't get mad, the younger boy added. In fact, I thought he was really pretty nice about it. Yeah, right, snickered JJ. Radford, nice. That's a good one. All right, so I'm not sure if Mr. Radford is changing his personality. There seems like there's usually characters in the story that JJ right now is very unlikable to me anyway. That's a sign of a good author that does that makes you not care for characters or like characters. But JJ is on my last nerve already. He still, even after all this, said, good thing I did that with the boat. So I don't know if he'll change, just like when we read Freak the Mighty. Loretta was this kind of bad person, but then she kind of changed at the end. So who knows? Maybe JJ will change. We'll see. And then we'll see if Radford changes. I don't know what the plan is with him. So I hope that you guys have a great day, and I will see you guys. I'll see the Blue group tomorrow for Community Circle, and then I have office hours this week if you have any questions about anything. Okay, I hope you guys have a good day. Love ya. Bye.